Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of NFL Dash. I'm Cody Schoeler here with Ryan Root as always, and we are coming back from a bit of a hiatus, little break. Took some time to refresh and just figure things out in our
We had to
lives. Now
move. So.
yeah, yeah. We're coming back to you, and the NFL is coming back officially next month because it is August 1st. So we're officially not 4 weeks away, but it will be back 1 month. We're getting there, and we are going to continue with our series going through the top five positional rankings. We're going to do an offensive kind of super episode here, finishing out with our running backs, receivers, and tight ends. We're going to begin with the running backs. Ryan, I'll let you kick it off. I know we've got the same guy at number 5, but I'll let you lead here.
All right. It's good to be back here on NFL Dash. We'll talk a little bit about our top fives. I'll throw an honorable mention right out the gates. I'll go Ezekiel Elliott for an honorable mention. Would love to put him higher, but he's just got issues hanging onto the ball, it seems, as of late. And Dallas is kind of a wild card going into this next year. So I have him at that honorable mention, number 6, number 7 spot, however you want to list them there. But at 5, I have, and you have, Nick Chubb from the Cleveland Browns. Can't say that Nick Chubb, is a slacking running back by any means. He had a little bit of a slow start, I guess, in the league. But I mean, this last year behind that Browns O line, like they're definitely a run first team, and he just carries the team on his back. He has a fraction of the fumbles that Ezekiel Elliott has, and that was kind of the big deciding factor for me, was that Ezekiel Elliott's a little bit of a bigger body, a little more physical, but Nick Chubb can hang on to the ball. He puts up numbers consistently. I mean, this last year he went through an injury hiatus where Kareem Hunt had to take over, and he still put up outstanding numbers even when he wasn't playing all 16 games. I'm just going to look it up here.
Yeah,
still has 1,000 yards on the season.
Yeah, he played only 12 games.
12 games, 1,000 yards. You're less than 100 yards per game, like just under 100 yards per game. I mean, that he's sitting comfortably at number 5. I mean, what else do you have to say about him?
Yeah, I mean, I was probably about 50-50 between either him or Saquon Barkley here. I think if Saquon Barkley was healthy all of last year, then he probably has a spot in this top 5 because I think he has the talent to do that. So he would get my honorable mention here, and I wouldn't be surprised.
There's so many good running backs.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we've only have one season of Saquon Barkley, and it was incredible. But another good year from him, I think, gets him comfortably back into this conversation. But Nick Chubb, I mean, he's just consistency in terms of his 3 years. I mean, he's got 3,500 rushing yards in 3 seasons, 8 and 12 touchdowns. So he just gets you what you need from a running back. He doesn't do the crazy receiving numbers or some of these other things that some of these running backs ahead of him can do, which is probably what limits him to just number 5. But I mean, in terms of running the ball between the tackles and just getting yardage, he is up there with the best of them, and that's where his value lies. And so just the fact that he's been able to do it consistently despite the injury last year, despite not really getting the starting role till halfway through his rookie year or whatever, I mean, he's been there and been consistent and just done what he has to do. So I think Nick Chubb is deservedly at that number 5 spot. And so I'm going to move on to my number 4. And we kind of have, if you want to break down our top 5 into tiers, we kind of agree on the caliber of these guys that just a little flip-flopped in some positions. But I'm going with Dalvin Cook at number 4. I think, I mean, last year he obviously was insane, going for 1,500 yards and 16 touchdowns and a little over 1,100 yards and 13 touchdowns the year before. But we talked about Nick Chubb and his consistency, even though with the injury. The one thing about Dalvin Cook is he does have a lot of injury issues and just is a little, it's a bit worrisome with him just because of how many times he has injury scares. Even if he doesn't miss a whole game, he'll come out of a game or he'll miss a week or so. And I think that has prevented him from fully realizing his potential, which we saw last year. I mean, the way he played last year, he was, probably the second best running back in the league, obviously helped by some injuries at the top. But, when he fully plays as good as he can, he can be that top guy. So I've got him at number 4, which is still incredible. So I know you don't have him at number 4, but you have him close to that. So tell me what you like about Dalvin Cook, and then we can move on to your number 4.
Yeah, so our 3s and 4s are flip-flops here, because at my number 4, I have Alvin Kamara from Alvin Kamara, from New Orleans. I love Kamara a lot. I love him, especially in PPR fantasy leagues. But Kamara, to me, at 4, I think he sits comfortably there with Cook at 3. Only reason we're really picking at hairs here. But with Alvin Kamara, I see him a little bit more as kind of a receiving weapon at that back spot than Dalvin Cook. Kamara did get 900 yards rushing on the year too, which is obviously better than 90% of other running backs out there. So, and that puts him in that put him 14th in the league for rushing yards. So it's not like he can't run the ball, but for an offense in New Orleans that seems to be developing more into like a college style playbook by the day, with the Swiss Army knife himself with Taysom Hill at quarterback, and we'll see what that offense turns out to be this next year. But Kamara at 4, he's still top 5 regardless. But the reason I have Cook at 3 is I think Cook's more of a talented runner than Kamara. Not saying Kamara can't run, but the near 600-yard rushing difference this past season alone, I think, kind of settles that. And Kamara is going to see the amount of games that he played this year.
He played 15.
So played one more game than Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook with 14 games played. Again, injury issues is the biggest thing with Dalvin. He could be in the conversation for being one of the best, if not the best running backs in the league, if the injuries weren't such a concern. But going off of 1,100 yards the year before to 1,500 yards this year, it seems like we're kind of in that we're reaching the peak of that bell curve when it comes to running backs. And I'm excited to see what he's going to do this next year, considering Minnesota is slowly kind of creeping up to becoming a really consistently fun team. I wouldn't be surprised if he had 1,600 yards rushing again this year.
Yeah, and the thing about this list, and really with any of these lists that we're doing when we're doing the best of the best, I wouldn't be surprised if any of these guys were the best running back in the NFL this next season. It's not, a foregone conclusion that Dalvin Cook is going to be the 4th best running back this year. He could easily be the best, and at times was the best last year. But the thing about Alvin Kamara is obviously that is true that he has been more of a receiving back. He's had 80 plus receptions every season, which he's played 4 seasons. He also has had 700 rushing yards every season. And the big thing about him is he scores touchdowns. He has 58 touchdowns in 60 games. That's just an insane pace. But the thing about him is it's been more of a fit and a scheme issue for him. He has a career average of 5 yards per carry. That's better than Dalvin Cook's average yards per carry. So the reason his yardage is so low is just because of the way he's used and the offense that he's in. So, definitely I think those two are comparable, and that's the reason why I have him over Cook, not just the injury issues, which Alvin Kamara has also had some injury issues, but just the fact that I think, if, Alvin Kamara was in a Browns or a Vikings type offense that pounded the ball the way they do, I think he absolutely could do it. And could have 1,600 yards if he was in the right scheme. But, just the versatility that he has. His penchant for scoring touchdowns, like I mentioned. He's just an insanely versatile running back, and that skill has shown on the field. So we can move on to our 1 and 2s, which we have flopped. I think we do this a year ago. I think I would agree with you probably. But I'm taking last year into account, and I'm going with Christian McCaffrey at my number 2. The injury last year didn't help, and I think obviously he's still the number one running back in fantasy. I think a lot of times we view a lot of rankings in fantasy terms because that's how we rank a lot of players. And he is such a far and away dominant force at fantasy football that I think, and he's a dominant force in on the field, real football as well. I mean, he had a 1,000 season, 1,000 rushing yards, 1,000 receiving yards, the third running back in NFL history to do that. And the last time he did play, full season, he had almost 2,400 total yards and 19 touchdowns in 2019. I mean, this is a guy who came in and does everything from the running back position in a time when the passing game is taking off and is dominating the game. He's a running back that truly never steps off the field and he's really the number one receiver on the Panthers and the number one running back. He's just an insane player, and I think if he would have played when he did play last year, he was still dominant. I mean, there's no questioning that. The injury, I think, knocks him a little bit, as does, I'll give it away, my number one, Derrick Henry, as does the just utter dominance and physicality that Derrick Henry has been, taking the league by storm with over the past few years. But, yeah, I mean, Christian McCaffrey does what he does better than, anybody in the league. Alvin Kamara probably comes the closest, and he doesn't do what he does. Christian McCaffrey just gets so many touches and such a high percentage of the snap count. He's a 3-down workhorse back, which is something that has rarely been seen. So just, how dynamic he is. It's hard to find a guy who we haven't seen somebody play a full season better than him when he has, been on the field for a whole season.
And that's really the thing with me, with CMC. I think McCaffrey, again, this is picking hairs between him and Derrick Henry. Christian McCaffrey at my number one. I'll start with Derrick Henry. He's a 6-foot monster of a running back who can stiff arm anybody in his way, it seems. I'm sure Aaron Donald is probably, the person who's going to win 100% of the battles with anybody. Maybe that's the one person that couldn't bring him down, that could bring him down on the first touch. But Derrick Henry,
he's
a machine.
6'3", by the way.
Yeah, I knew it was
huge.
Tall. I didn't know it was that tall.
Yeah, 6 foot's pretty. That's tall for a running back, but 6'3", he's an absolute monster.
Most backs are like 5'9", I think. And the fact that he's 6'3" and some of the best receivers in the NFL are shorter than that. I'm sure there's probably some great tight ends that might be shorter than that. But at that size, at running back, he's an absolute monster, and he can get those 2,000-yard rushing seasons like this last year. My only thing, if I am nitpicking here, this kind of relates a little bit with Nick Chubb too. If you put Derrick Henry on a team that's not, super run heavy like Tennessee, like Cleveland, like, the Cowboys were a few seasons back. If you put Derrick Henry on, let's say, the Packers have, Aaron Jones is a great back as well. Definitely no slouch there. But if you put Derrick Henry on a team that doesn't rely so heavily on him, the numbers would take a dip just naturally because he's not touching the ball as much. But I like looking at DeMarco Murray as a great example of this sort of trend, as well as Todd Gurley. DeMarco Murray, when he had his offensive player of the year season with Dallas, and then the next year he goes to Tennessee, I believe, and it just floated away into non-existence. His momentum just stopped. And it was the same thing kind of with Todd Gurley this last season, granted with inconsistencies and injuries and whatever you want to call it. The thing with Christian McCaffrey now at my number one, he's a weapon on both receiving and rushing the ball. I'm not going to throw in bias of Max Borghi in here, but it's going to be, it's going to be at least a little bit there. But the fact that he's going to have the possibility of getting 1,000 yards rushing, 1,000 yards receiving every single season is ridiculous. If there was an award watch list like they have in college football as opposed to the NFL, if they were really awarding, the number one players in each position in the NFL like they do in college, Well, Christian McCaffrey. Oh, we might have lost Cody here. Oh, we lost Cody for a little bit, but we'll work on getting him back. The thing with Christian McCaffrey is that he'll be on that watch list for best running back, and he would certainly be on the watch list for best receiver as well, just for how talented he is at receiving the ball. But if Christian McCaffrey did not get hurt, there we go, now he's back. If Christian McCaffrey did not get hurt, even across the 3 games he played, he still averaged 75 yards rushing the ball, and that's not at 100% health. You still average 50 yards receiving. That's not at 100% health. If we do some quick math off the top of my head, 50 yards a game times that by 16, now 17, would have had 800 yards receiving, and that's not at 100%. And at rushing the ball, 75 yards a game times that by 16, you're still over 1,000. So it's just at that point where he's not 100%. Oh, we lost Cody here again. At that point, playing when he's not 100% and he's still that dangerous is the reason why I have him at number 1. But